Star Trek, Primitive Passenger, Season 6, Episode 5, Janeway's Tour, Part 2. Nolan, on the other hand, had a problem at Miner 1261 that wasn't going away. That morning, on the Ringworld, he'd been notified of an attack on the little minor asteroid. Now, in the orb, he made contact. "This is Jensen at Kamikaze Camp. Is that you, Nolan?" "I'm here. Do you read?" "I got no visual," Nolan replied. "We're working with 2 cans and a string here, sir. The camp and at least 3 miners are in bad shape. 1261 got hit first. The sentry drone called, and it's 8 available weapons platforms. But as far as we know, they never got a shot off." The attack continued right across the sector. It seems to be the same dozen or so ships doing hit runs. "How bad is it? Do we know who brought the fire yet?" Fortunately, defense satellites and star platforms blinked in to cover ops throughout these 3 sectors. But we never got a solid look at the ships. I hope it's okay, but I sent the warp signatures to Alara to get a jump on identifying our attackers. I'm in country. Nolan blinked in above 1261. "Do you have casualties that need to be moved?" "No, sir. We had a couple injured, and they blinked out on one of the platforms." The foreman said, "I'm not sure if they went to Horizon or the station for treatment." "Sir," there was pause. "We lost 4 of ours on 1261. They'd been transported back to Horizon for detail." "Understood," replied Nolan. "Is there anything you or your people need now? We're all set down here. Backup systems are working well, and we've talked to ops. Everything we need has already arrived. I'm sorry we weren't able to stave off the attack. They caught us completely by surprise, and were so fast they got ahead of us. I have Alara on the comm with us. Listen, you did everything you could. The sentries worked the way they're supposed to. It's the best we can hope for." Nolan took a breath. "Call me any time for any reason. We're going to see if we can figure out who's behind this." "Alara, are you seeing this? I'm sending scans of the scorch marks now. Any luck with the warp signatures?" Nolan tapped at his holographic console, then beamed down to the minor outpost, appearing in a full spacesuit. The outpost was completely destroyed. He began taking scans. Inside his helmet, "Nolan?" "I'm here, Alara, on the ground. My scans are uploading directly to you." Nolan continued to work through the wreckage. The crew quarters had sustained a direct hit. It was charred and inside out. "It's not good, Nolan. We only have 2 known factions that match this signature. The Vorpal Syndicate being the most likely. Dare I ask the other?" As if the mythical and elusive Vorpal Syndicate wasn't bad enough. "Gorn," was the one-word reply. Nolan stopped, swallowed hard. "Bring the Havoc, and anything else with big guns. And I want 2,500 sentry drones covering this entire area." Gorn was not a word he'd ever expected to hear again, though he still had nightmares. The only thing he knew about the Vorpal Syndicate, the remaining organization left over from the Vorpal's days, was that they could wreak terrible devastation and disappear without a trace. But the Gorn still scared him more. Nolan continued through the ground wreckage of mining Asteroid 1261, but found nothing conclusive. Before moving on, he gave it one last look. A significant security failure on his part, and the loss of 4 Neos. He beamed up to the orb and contacted ops on Empire North. "Go ahead, Mercer. It's Lynn Redondo. Any news?" "Nothing good, Redondo. Nothing good. Can I ask a favor of your team and ops?" He blinked to the next attack site and beamed down. "I need you to put together something like a 50% across-the-board security increase, including the station, assets large and small. I can do that in an hour or so. Do you want me to get approval before deploying?" She was cut off. "Nolan, I can help with this," came Alara's voice. "Lynn, please work with Alara. and the two of you can go ahead and deploy assets as needed." He gave a thumbs up through the window to the Neos inside of the second mining post. This one, the living quarters were almost completely intact, but all of the mining equipment was destroyed. He beamed into the unit's airlock. A moment later, the door hissed and opened into the crew quarters. "Welcome aboard, sir." A stressed Neo leaned in to shake Mercer's hand. Mercer removed his helmet and reached out with a thickly gloved hand. "How is everybody?" He looked across their concerned faces. "I'm so glad they only hit the mines. Everybody here made it?" The four Neos, 2 male and 2 female, looked at each other and back at Nolan. "We were more than lucky, sir," said the foreman, pulling her hair back and tying it quickly. "We were sound asleep on second shift, and first shift were in the control room when the breach occurred." She motioned between the group. "I literally woke up in my pressure suit with the helmet sealed." "Me too," the younger male interjected. "I had no idea what was happening." Nolan nodded, absorbed in the events. "The control room breached, sir. We lost ALL stage on ATMO." The taller male enunciated, "And that compromised the connector module and vented the crew quarters." The foreman finished his thought. "All 4 of us were automatically transported inside of our pressure suits as soon as the breach occurred. Or I should say that our suits were transported around us. The tech saved us, sir." "Fantastic," Nolan breathed, his voice barely above a whisper, the weight of what could have been settled heavily on his shoulders. He tapped the comm on his suit. "Buffalo, Tony." The comm crackled to life. "This is Buff. Go ahead, sir." The familiar voice was a welcome sound in the aftermath of chaos. Nolan swallowed hard, composing himself. "Are you able to see the feed from my camera, Buff?" He held his helmet up, angling it towards the 4 Neos. Their faces were etched with a mix of relief and residual fear. "Do you see these 4 miners standing in front of me?" A chuckle, tinged with nervousness, came through the comm. "Yeah. Yes, sir, I see them." The Neos, sensing the gravity of the moment, waved at the camera, their smiles a bit shaky but genuine. "They just survived a full breach on mining Asteroid 712. Nolan paused, letting the implications sink in. "You want to guess how?" The silence that followed was deafening. Buff's breathing, quick and shallow, was the only sound coming through the comm. The realization of what his work had accomplished seemed to rob him of speech. "We love you, brother," the taller male Nia suddenly shouted, breaking the tension. "First round's on me." The younger one chimed in, his voice cracking with emotion. Nolan turned the helmet and spun around so the grateful Neos were behind him. His eyes were glistening, a mix of pride and relief evident in his expression. "You did good, Buff," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You did so good." For a moment, Nolan stood there, letting the gravity of the situation wash over him. The Neos gathered around, their presence a reminder of both the fragility and resilience of the life he'd created. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "All right, folks," he said, his voice regaining its usual strength. "I need to head out, wrap up what you absolutely must here, and get back to camp. I want you guys to take some time, and when this is all sorted, we're having a proper celebration. You've more than earned it." The Neos nodded, their expressions a mix of determination and gratitude. Nolan gave them one last nod before tapping his comm badge. In a shimmer of light, he vanished from the mining outpost. Back on the orb, Nolan found himself alone with his thoughts. The adrenaline of the crisis was beginning to ebb, leaving him with a hollow feeling in the pit of his stomach. He'd lost good people today, but where possible, lives were saved. And Gorn, "Ilara," he called out, his voice echoing in the empty space, "I'm heading back to Janeway. Keep me updated on any developments. And thank Buff again for me, will you? Make sure he knows how much he's appreciated." This was Nolan's code for promote him, give him bigger quarters and better stuff. "Of course, Nolan," Ilara's voice responded, a hint of warmth in her tone. And may I suggest you take a moment to compose yourself before returning to the Admiral? Your vital signs indicate elevated stress levels." Nolan smiled wryly. "Always looking out for me." He took a deep breath, centering himself. "All right, let's not keep the good Admiral waiting." With that thought, Nolan activated the orb systems, preparing to return to Janeway and the diplomatic dance that awaited him. As the familiar sensation of the blink drive enveloped him, he couldn't help but wonder how he'd explain this latest crisis to Starfleet's most decorated captain. Arriving back on Talix in the early evening, the sun had already set. Janeway and Neelix were deep in conversation, their laughter fading as they noticed his arrival. "I apologize for the delay," Nolan said, his usual easy demeanor slightly strained. There was a situation. Janeway's eyes narrowed, picking up on his tension. "Nothing too serious, I hope." "Nothing we can't handle," Nolan replied with a forced smile. "Would you rather wrestle a Vorpal or a Gorn Admiral?" he said, shaking his head jokingly. "What's a Vorpal?" Janeway said with a quizzical look. "And what's a Gorn?" asked Neelix, equally perplexed. Nolan shook it all off. He'd asked an impossible question with an impossible answer. He turned to Janeway. "Before we go, I should explain about the comm badge I gave you earlier." Janeway touched the badge on her chest, curiosity in her eyes. "It'll allow you to contact Neelix, Ilara, or myself, anytime, anywhere," Nolan explained. His tone was friendly, but there was an underlying seriousness to his words. "But I should warn you, if Starfleet tries to force you to let them reverse engineer it, it'll cease to function. It's a safety measure, nothing personal." Janeway nodded, understanding the implicit message. "Of course. I appreciate the trust, Nolan." She turned to Neelix. "We'll be able to stay in direct contact, Ambassador." After a warm farewell between Janeway and Neelix, Nolan activated his comm badge. In a swirling silver light, they found themselves aboard the orb, then blinked directly to Empire North, a full 100 years away at Warp 99. The station bustled with activity, a stark contrast to the depressing Cardassian-owned outpost it once was. Beings from across the quadrant haggled on the promenade, ate and drank and gambled, and spilled their secrets, and gave up their friends, and cheated and connived. Nolan's well-paid Dabo girls, waiters, cooks, and bartenders poured all that gossip and all those secrets into Nolan's intelligence apparatus. While in the upper levels, informal shop window embassies lined the concourse. Ferenginar, Cardassia, Romulus, Bajor, and many other factions and planets had permanent offices on the station. They were also all cheating and conniving, spilling their secrets and giving up their friends. Nolan's well-designed surveillance devices also poured all that gossip and all those secrets into Nolan's intelligence apparatus. Janeway looked up at the embassies, with several inhabitants lining the rail above them. "They're all spy eyes," Nolan loud whispered to Janeway. The spies all turned around. "I'm sure they are," Janeway laughed. "Two quadrants will know that I was here before we get to the end of the promenade." She looked over at a Klingon tossing a slab of targ onto the hot grill. It sizzled and the fat spattered. It smelled like hot targ. "Are you hungry, Admiral?" The Klingon chef laughed. "Nolan lets us raise our targ on the outer sutra. There the gravity is about 3/4 of that on Kronos. Now we get targ twice the size in half the time." He laughed. "They taste so good, we're selling them on the homeworld." "That's both amazing and terrifying at the same time." "A targ that big sounds awfully dangerous." As they meandered through the bustling promenade of Empire North, the cacophony of voices and clanking slot machines suddenly faded into the background. A lilting, familiar voice cut through the din, stopping Nolan in his tracks. "Hi, Johnny." Janeway turned, following Nolan's gaze to see a Vorta woman approaching. Her violet eyes sparkled with an intensity that seemed to transcend the artificial nature of her species. Without a word, Nolan strode toward her, enveloping her in an embrace that spoke volumes of a shared history. Kilana," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The tenderness in his tone was a stark contrast to the gruff exterior he usually presented. Sensing the intimacy of the moment, Janeway discreetly stepped back, finding herself beside Dr. Liz Aldean. The scientist's eyes were fixed on Nolan and the Vorta, a mixture of concern and understanding etched on her face. "So, what's the story with the Vorta?" Janeway asked in a low voice, her curiosity piqued. "And who's Johnny?" Liz's expression turned grave as she met Janeway's gaze. "Admiral, with all due respect, this is one thread you might not want to pull. Unless you're prepared to unravel everything you've built with Nolan, I'd suggest letting this one go." Despite the warning, Janeway found her curiosity gnawing at her. As they prepared to depart Empire North, she turned to Nolan, his eyes still holding a hint of the emotion from moments before. "Nolan," she began cautiously, "if you don't mind me asking, your Vorta friend, you two seem awfully close." A shadow passed over Nolan's face, pain etching deep lines around his eyes. "No," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The single word carried the weight of countless untold stories. Recognizing the need to change the subject, Nolan gestured to a nearby Bajoran. "Admiral, I'd like you to meet Dr. Dren the Colm. He's the brilliant mind who finally cracked the code on growing coffee on Horizon." Dr. Knockom's face lit up with pride as he shook Janeway's hand. "It's an honor, Admiral. I do hope you've been enjoying the fruits of our labor." Glancing at Nolan, "Did he tell you about the tailings?" Janeway raised her eyebrows and shook her head, looking at Nolan. "The tailings from the Horizon's hot side. All the mining operations in the desert continents produce tailings. The tailings were key to bringing up the pH, and since they don't hold much water, the tailings allowed the roots to drain properly." He looked over his glasses excitedly. "I got the idea from an old earth mineral called perlite." Clearly more excited about the details than anyone else, he trailed on for some time about how they will be able to produce coffee indefinitely on the tailings. Their exchange was brief but warm, the earlier tension surrounding Nolan and the Vorta dissipating somewhat as they prepared for their next destination. Janeway couldn't help but cast a final glance back for the Vorta woman now lost in the crowd. The exchange had offered a rare glimpse into the depths of Nolan Mercer, hinting at a vulnerability she hadn't expected to find. Soon Nolan was ushering Janeway toward their next destination. They transported to the Havoc, then blinked to Horizon. As they materialized on the planet's surface, Janeway's senses were overwhelmed. There were only a few days a year when the Robustas would be in bloom like this. Rolling hills covered in lush green coffee plants stretched as far as the eye could see. The jasmine-like scent of the coffee blossoms filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of fertile soil. Portable beehives dotted the fields. This was always a special time, and Nolan moved a lot of other things around to have Janeway here at this time. The humidity was stifling, even though it was not particularly hot. In the distance, a crowd of Neos was gathering, their excited chatter carrying on the warm breeze. "Had you ever imagined coffee could smell so sweet?" He grinned at her. "Oh, it's intoxicating, Nolan," she replied, letting her eyes roll back a little. Hundreds of young faces turned towards them, eyes wide with wonder and admiration. Janeway felt a surge of emotion at the sight. These were more than just clones or workers. They were a new generation, full of hope and potential. Nolan gently nudged her forward. "They're all here to see you, Catherine." Janeway stepped forward, addressing the crowd. Her voice carried across the field, strong and heartfelt. "I'm truly impressed by what you've accomplished here. Not just in giving me real coffee," she paused as chuckles rippled through the crowd, "but in your efforts to revive this species, making it available for everyone." A voice from the front row piped up, "For a price." The crowd erupted in laughter, and even Janeway couldn't help but smile. "It's wonderful to see everyone," she continued, her voice carrying across the field. "Thank you all for your hard work, and for coming out to say hello." It's truly moving to witness what you've accomplished here." The crowd cheered and gave enthusiastic applause, their faces beaming with accomplishment. As the applause died down, Janeway's eyes swept across the sea of faces before her. These weren't just workers or clones. They were a new generation, full of hope and potential. The realization of what Nolan had created here, not just a coffee plantation but a thriving community, struck her anew. She glanced at Nolan, standing quietly at her side. His face was impassive, but his eyes held a glimmer of something, pride perhaps, or a hint of defensiveness. It was a reminder of the complex man behind this extraordinary achievement. The cheers of the crowd faded into a comfortable buzz of conversation. Nolan began to guide Janeway away from the center of attention. They strode up a dirt path towards a quieter corner of the plantation. As they walked, Janeway felt the weight of her next words pressing upon her. The time had come to address the true purpose of her visit. They reached a secluded spot overlooking the vast fields of coffee plants. The sweet aroma of coffee blossoms filled the air, a fitting backdrop for what was to come. Janeway took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "Nolan," she began, her tone shifting from the warmth of her public address to something more official, "I hope you know how impressed I am with everything I've seen here." Nolan nodded, a hint of wariness creeping into his expression. "But," he prompted, sensing there was more to come. Janeway reached into her uniform and produced a pad. She turned to face Nolan fully, her expression serious but not unkind. "I won't pretend that this visit was purely social," she said, her voice low and measured. "Starfleet, the Federation, we'd like to extend an offer. An olive branch, if you will." Nolan took the pad, his expression unreadable. "Let me guess. All the protection of the Federation in exchange for sharing my technology and submitting to Starfleet oversight." Janeway leaned forward, her voice earnest. "It's more than that, Nolan. We're not asking you to dismantle what you've built. We're asking for a partnership. It's a chance to be part of something bigger. More importantly," she paused, "Nolan, it's a chance to come home." She put her hand on his arm for emphasis. Nolan's eyebrow raised skeptically. "A partnership? That's a loaded term, Admiral. What exactly does Starfleet have in mind?" "Collaboration," Janeway replied. "Shared research initiatives, cultural exchanges, joint colonization efforts. Your people would retain their autonomy, but with the added security and resources of the Federation behind them." Nolan was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. Finally he spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "It's an intriguing offer, Catherine. I'll need time to consider this, to discuss it with my people." Before Janeway could respond, Alara's voice came through Nolan's comm badge. "The USS Titan has entered the system." Nolan nodded, turning to Janeway. "I suppose this is where our tour ends, Admiral. Beam us out, Alara." In a swirl of light, they were on the bridge of the USS Titan. Captain Sandra Wilt stood from her chair, surprise evident on her face. At over 2 meters tall, with Rwandan heritage and a rare rise from enlisted ranks to captain, Wiltz cut an imposing figure. "Admiral Janeway," she greeted, recovering quickly. "I trust your expedition was successful." She glanced at Mercer. "More than you know, Captain," Janeway replied, a hint of something unreadable in her voice. Nolan turned to Wiltz. "Captain, my apologies. I hadn't intended on arriving unannounced." "Not a problem, Mr. Mercer. We're in your backyard. It's to be expected," she stated with just the smallest taste of disdain. She sat upright on the edge of her chair. "I'm genuinely sorry. With your permission, I'd like to expedite your return journey to Earth." 2 sentry drones appeared on the view screen. "It'll save you 4 days, and think of the sensor readings you'll have for the astrometrics geeks." Quickly wrapping up his sales pitch was Der Prayer, Thomas, scanners to full. Ensign Yannock, reroute power to long-range sensors. Captain Wilt smiled. "Doctor, are you online? Prepare for a sick bay full of nauseous patients." Nolan gave Janeway a genuine hug, with an extra squeeze to it. As Janeway's eyes began to bulge a little, she gave in and hugged him back. "Call me any time." Nolan pointed to her comm badge as he stepped back. "Captain, hold tight. We'll have you home in a minute." Nolan waved as he lit up and transported from the Titan to one of the sentry drones. "Admiral Janeway, it's Tanya Flagstaff." A nervous voice came over the comm on the Titan. "Can you hear me?" Janeway looked over to Captain Wiltz. "I hear you, Miss Flagstaff. I just had to say that it was such a pleasure meeting you on morning. I hope I didn't say anything wrong," her voice wavering a little. "I wanted to let you know that I'm here, in the Sentry, and it's an honor to usher you home. It's my honor, Tanya. I'm glad to know I'm in the capable hands of a highly qualified nutritionist." Janeway chuckled facetiously. "I don't want you to think we're bad." Tanya pushed out, holding back a sob. "We're just people." There was a flash of light, and suddenly Earth loomed large before them. Gasps echoed across the bridge as the crew realized what had happened. A few alarms went off. "Until next time, Catherine," Nolan said over the comm. "And Captain, it's been a pleasure. Goodbye," was all Tanya could croak out through her sobs. In a blink, the sentries were gone. As the Titan moved into standard orbit, Janeway stood at the view screen, her mind racing with all she had seen and learned. The comm badge Nolan had given her felt heavy against her chest, a tangible reminder of the vast, complex universe that existed beyond the Federation. She knew that her report to Starfleet would be both illuminating and challenging. But as she gazed down at the blue marble of Earth, Janeway couldn't shake the feeling that she'd let Nolan down. To once again bring him so close to Earth, yet send him back to his own corner of space. He had been very hospitable on their whirlwind tour. The habit blinked back into existence near Empire North. Inside, Nolan stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the station beyond the viewport. "Nolan?" Ilara's voice was gentle. "Are you all right?" She walked down and stood beside him. He took a deep breath. "I'm fine, Ilara. It's just—" He trailed off, struggling to find the words. "Tanya's outburst was unexpected," Ilara offered. Nolan nodded slowly. "I hadn't realized their desire, their need for acceptance from humanity. I never thought, I didn't know it was like that for them." With all that had happened, Nolan felt crushed. To feel Tanya's ache was almost unbearable. He ran a hand through his hair, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've given them the knowledge, service, purpose, but they've also taken on my longings, my insecurities." He paused, swallowing hard. "They're carrying the weight of my hopes and fears, Ilara. And they're doing it without the lifetime of experiences I had to prepare for it." Nolan drew Ilara close. "Reach out to her now. Let her know everything's okay, and I'll talk to her in the next few days." Still holding each other, Ilara and Nolan vanished in shimmering silver light. Epilogue. The darkness of Buff's quarters was pierced by the soft chirp of his comm, pulling him reluctantly from a heavy sleep. His eyes barely opened, trying to adjust to the dim light. "Buffalo Tony," a woman's voice called through the comb, her tone lilting and playful. Before Buff could muster a response, another voice joined in. "Are you there?" Punctuated by quiet giggles that echoed through the small room, Buff growled, his voice gravelly with the remnants of sleep. "It's Buff." He flopped back onto his pillow, trying to ignore the disturbance. But the door hissed open, spilling the courtyard lights into the room. Buff squinted against the sudden brightness as two silhouettes appeared at the entrance. Tall, slender, unmistakably the female Neos from Minor 712A. Their sleek forms lingered in the doorway, outlined by the soft glow of the hall beyond. "We couldn't sleep," one said, her voice a teasing blend of gratitude and mischief. The other giggled softly. "We thought we'd show you our appreciation." Buff sat up sharply, now wide awake, his senses fully alert. His heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline replacing the fatigue that had weighed him down moments before. He watched as the door slid shut behind them, cutting off the light and plunging the room into near-total darkness once more. Soft laughter filled the space, and Buff's mind raced. Shadows shifted as they moved closer, the rustling of covers echoing in the quiet room.